Ford Motor kept operating his museums in Greenfield Village after he died, updating the museums to showcase all kinds of innovations. What were the short-term effects of scaling up the auto industry? Well, this also meant scaling up the infrastructure of roads, gas stations, and mechanics.
So this happens when you are doing mass production, and they made a township also, as has been told over here. So the infrastructure around has to be brought up. This we are going to study in detail also later on. I can, for now, I can tell is like we have Gurgaon in India, where Maruti was the first factory, which was Maruti's factory was located over there, and it led to mushrooming growth of other automobile industries also. So for North India, it has become the automobile hub.
Shops that could keep motorists a motorin'. Cars also increased access to national parks, more people were moving to cities, and the US government was starting to protect wild spaces from development. Cars allowed people in cities to get out to these spaces, generating new interest in nature with a capital N. This led to research on the
So this is a very interesting point which is brought. What happened was that with the growth of uh, 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 production, assembly line was used, and then mass production, people started going out. I mean, I can tell you that there is a whole cycle associated with this. We can understand it by a small example, that where it all started. So mass production and standardization led to increase in car sales. So once there was increase in car sales, more standardized parts were needed. Getting it? So it's not that only Ford is using the advantage of it. The requirements for, because Ford itself can't produce all the spares which are needed. They would need ancillary units or the companies which could support its production. So more standardized requirement for more standardized parts was raised. Subsequently, there were more jobs being created because of that. Because the spare parts industry was booming and more industries came up, then it led to increase in the demand of steel. It led to increase in the demand of glass, rubber, leather for the upholstery in the car. And then more people with job meant that more people were earning greater amount of money, or their salaries increased and they could now afford to buy a car. So it again led to uh, increase in production because the demand of the car increased. Are you getting? This became a vicious circle, and it still exists. Also, this was about industry, but on the other side, uh, because of the car, because of the ease in transportation, people started traveling a lot. And you can see that even now in US, we can see that the kind of culture that they have is on weekends they generally would like to travel places. They hardly stay at home on weekends. So that culture started building up. Even government started pushing, okay, now you should uh, go out. And even the President Roosevelt, 1920s, he said, okay, you people, now you have car, and they were encouraging that Americans go out and see their country now. So it led to uh, opening of another industry, that's tourism industry, and jobs in diners, motels, hotels, all they started booming. So another parallel industry was, which was booming because of the growth in automobile industry, was uh, hospitality industry. The production of oil started increasing because of the increasing growth in the automobile production. And consequently, because of now that many people are using a greater or a significant proportion of the population was using roads, the requirement for building roads increased. So are you? I think you are able to get the whole change in the cultural change happened because of this. So this became a vicious circle. That
Scientific management of forests and influenced the young discipline of ecology, which we'll get to in a later episode. In terms of economics, other car manufacturers emulated the Fordist assembly line method. While Ford concentrated on producing as many Model Ts as possible, General Motors created many different models, giving Americans more options. By the middle of the century,
so the difference between General Motors and Ford was that Ford was sticking to some standard model, T model. They are not giving much variety. On the other hand, General Motor came up with another strategy of providing more models, but then because more variety. But when you increase the variety, now I'll explain you a concept of mass production and why it is successful. And okay, so let's take a small example. There's a term called economies of scale. Anyone understands the meaning of economies of scale? Is there anyone in the class who gets the meaning of economies of scale? Okay, now let me introduce it. It is the basic reason why people produce in large amount, or people would like to stick to some models and not many models, or now what is the difficulty in customization, or why everyone can't get what he wants. Okay, so let's say in a normal household, in your household you use 10 soaps in a month. Okay, now there are two options to purchase these soaps, one at a time and
So
all
are
together.
you using the whiteboard?
Just a second, I'm just sharing it. Just keep reminding me. At times I forget to share. So I think now it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hmm. So you have two options. Either you purchase you in a household you are using. I mean that's a large quantity, but anyway, let's assume 10 soaps in a month. So you have an option. You can purchase one soap at a time, and whenever it is required, go and purchase it, or you purchase all of them together. Now, in order to get to the nearest retailer, 5 rupee petrol is spent. Okay, per trip with scooter or whatever bike you're going. Okay, so this is applicable to both the situations. And the cost of one soap is, let's say, rupees 50. Okay, so what will be the cost if I purchase one soap at a time?
550.
55. And if I purchase 10 soaps at a time, what will be the cost? If if I purchase one soap at a time, 55 rupees, and for 10 soaps, it will be 550, right? And for 1 month together, if I'm purchasing, it will be
550.
505.
505. Okay, so the difference of 45 rupees which you get over here, this reflects the concept of economies of scale. Economies of scale. Getting it? So what you can observe is there is one fixed cost, and there is a variable cost. Per unit cost is you can say is the variable cost, because the number of units you purchase, that's going to be variable, and that depends on the number of units that you're purchasing. And there is another component of that, which is the fixed cost. Okay, now irrespective of the quantity, the amount you're going to spend in producing or transportation or distribution, whatever, that will be irrespective of the size of your order or the number of units you are purchasing. So that is your fixed cost. So if you produce more, the per unit cost will be lesser in a way. So here, if you look, the per unit cost is 505, while here the per unit cost is 50.5. Okay, so that's why it is easier, or it promotes the mass production. The more you produce, your machine will be engaged for that much amount of. Let's say your machine keeps running. Okay, you don't stop your machine 24 hours; it keeps running. So whether it is loaded or not, more or less your electricity consumption will be the same. So why not produce more on that? Okay. See, why we are in this state, I mean, why the world is in a bad shape right now. I'm talking about the bad, or the flip side of the mass production. Why the world is in a bad shape as far as the environment is concerned. Anyone? We can say it's the because of, yeah. I mean, I would like your opinion first, but this is the root of all the problems. If you look at Industrial Revolution 1 and Industrial Revolution 2, the amount of pollution which happened between the Industrial Revolution 1 and 2 is very, I mean, that it's not that much. But post Industrial Revolution 2, the amount of pollution which has happened is largely because of this simple concept of economies of scale. And everyone, see, if you produce more, you will try to sell it more. You will try to create situations where people consume more. Okay, so this economies of scale is at the root cause of the problems which we are facing. This our world is facing right now is because of, now if, see, I want to make more profit. Okay, so if I have to make more profit, I have to produce more. If I have to produce more, I will have to um, ask people to produce to consume more. And the more you consume, then now with consumption, your plastic is associated. Whatever you consume, there is a fuel associated with that. There is plastic associated with that. So this economies of scale is causing the whole. I mean, it is at the root of it. Okay, I hope all of you get the concept. You get the concept of economies of
Yes,
scale?
sir.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy. Now, why this whole cycle started is just because you got that. Now, initially, when it all started, all looked rosy, like everyone, good roads and more consumption, people traveling more, spending more on fuel, everything's happening like that. Okay, now we come back to this. Yeah.
Three companies, the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, dominated the American auto market.
One thing which I forgot to talk about was standardization. Why in mass production you have more standardization? In order to mass produce, you need standardization. Why? Who's going to answer that?
Because if the products won't be standard, then each time the employees or the workers would have to be taught a new thing, and then only they would be able to create that product because of the like the division of labor thing.
One reason, that definitely could be the reason. Another reason is that if you are not standardizing means a lot of variety is there. So every time different variety. So you will have to set up different dies to make it. The machine setup will be interrupted again and again. Machine will have to be stopped again. So generally, what happens is the machines, machines which are producing, they are just not like switch on and off. If you switch them off and you change a different design, if you are doing making a different design, then the whole uh, the the momentum at which you were producing earlier loses. You have to set up it. In setting up again, some hours will be lost, and the cost. I mean, we talk about economies of scale, so I think the economies of scale reduces if you do too much variety. So that's why General Motors never, till a certain period of time, they were not successful because they were producing more variety. And the economies of scale, the whole concept of mass production and the industrial revolution too was based on economies of scale, and they were not able to match Ford for a long time.
pushing out small regional manufacturers. And Ford's company became a symbol for the transformative
Let me tell you about this
Yes, some
amazing offer
advertisement.
from Udemy. Right now, they're having one of their biggest sales of the year, and their courses
power of American industry and for the tension between the owners of large corporations and the workers running them. Industrialists felt that their workers had freedom as non-unionized contractors and that large corporations were a natural result of innovation. Workers, on the other hand, didn't feel free. They worked long hours and often had little choice, as with Ford Motor, to where and even how they lived. They came together forming unions in order to negotiate for better labor conditions. Finally, scientists and engineers professionalized a lot over the course of the 1800s. The American Medical Association, for example, was founded in 1847, and Wyoming became the first state to legally license engineers in 1907. Increasingly, being a doctor or engineer wasn't something you could just do. You needed university training, financial backing, and professional licensing. And corporations such as the Edison companies and Ford Motor offered paths for professionals to follow, shaping what it was that scientists and engineers did all day and why they did those things. Today, many people claim there has been a third industrial revolution tied to digital information technologies, and even a fourth, a current one, tied to internet-connected automation. Before we get to those stories, however, we have
So with this, the Ford story almost is completed, and they discontinued their T model because it became very prevalent and it became too common. So when anything becomes too common, people start after certain point of time, people stop using it because it's no more in trend, like Maruti 800. So Model T was discontinued in 1927, and then the amount of production was more than 15 crores uh, cars which were sold of Model T. And till date, it has been the fastest selling in terms of quantity. Except Beetle is there, Volkswagen Beetle, which is still selling. And but it took a lot of time for Beetle to produce the 15 crore cars. But Ford only did that in 20 years. So that was, and then yesterday we were talking about Taylor, who was a consultant to Ford, and with the help of Taylor only, Ford had introduced the assembly line concept. So he's regarded as the as father of scientific management, Frederick Taylor, and the management discipline itself came because of the interventions made by Taylor. And he's again, I'm repeating again, is called as the father of scientific management. So, what is this scientific management? We say scientific management is a systematic study of relationships between people and the task that they do. Are you getting it? There can be n number of ways to do a task. Like if you're washing a car, there can be several ways in which you can wash a car. But what is the most efficient way of washing a car? What method should be used, and with what which method your effort will be least and your purpose will be solved. That's what he did. So after that, he introduced four principles of scientific management. So let's see this video, which is remaining right now.
Ford's factory. The lines became the key.
The assembly line was born.
Is there an echo in this expression?
So on one hot August morning, they tried it that way. A husky young fellow put a rope over his shoulder, and Henry
There is a problem in the audio, right? Hmm.
No, sir.
Okay. I think let me know if there's a problem with the audio. Okay.
No, sir.
Ford called, "Let's go." And at that very moment, as the workmen began to fasten the parts onto the slowly moving car, the assembly line was born.
Soon assembly lines were up and running in Ford's factory. The lines became the key to mass production, a system that would remain virtually unchanged for most of the century. A network of clanging conveyors was used to deliver parts to an exact point on the line. The workers became an integral part of the great machine, and management set the pace, without discussion or negotiation, for unions were forbidden. The men faced new pressure as the final assembly line beat out the rhythm for the whole factory. There was no way they could stop or slow it down. Few stood the pace and din for long. Men tried it for a few weeks, then quit. But Ford had an answer.
Now, initially, people were running after getting these jobs because they were paying by the amount of work that you do, right? There is a flip side to this. Has anyone seen Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times? I'll show you a small video, which although is funny, but clearly tells that the kind of working environment which this is providing, what it was doing to the workers. So I'll just give me a second and I'll share that video also. Yeah, Kiran, you are saying something? You've raised hand.
By mistake, sir. Sorry.
Okay. So, anyway, I'll put that video. There's a problem in sharing. The sharing tab is not coming now. So I'll continue my lecture only then. So sharing, I don't know why the tab is disabled right now. Anyway, so Taylor proposed the assembly line, and because of the assembly line, there were four principles of scientific management that arose, which were first, you study the way workers perform their task. That is, you gather all the informal knowledge that the workers possess, and then you experiment with the ways of improving how tasks can be performed, like time and motion study. Like time study, that how much time you are taking on what task. You break down the task into small pieces, and then you monitor that how much time the individual task is taking, and what are the wasteful motions. Probably is just moving in some alleys while 500 meters in a day worker is moving, and then you convert those 500 walking meters into time and then convert it into money. You can save a large amount of uh, money in that. Then second one was that you codify all the methods and the sequences with which the work is done. Codify means make it standard. If your left hand is moving from this place to this place, how much? So you make a code for this, that left movement of the left hand. A specific code was made for that. So then even the tasks were standardized, not only the parts, but the way the things were to be done were standardized, for the simple reason that you are producing, since you are making a standard product, आप एक standard चीज बना रहे हैं. So even then the movements which you are going to make, those can also be standardized and then convert it into time. After converting it into time, you can convert further into wages and salaries, and that will also you help the people in defining what is the standard output of a standard worker on a certain job, and what should be the salary of that. So to that extent it went. And then the third one was to select workers who possess skills and abilities, so that you can put them as standards. You can make standard workers as a role models, create role models or standard workers. And the fourth principle was to establish a fair or acceptable level of performance for a task, and then develop a pay structure. So eventually, the Taylor's principles converted all the tasks into standard tasks, and then standard task into standard worker, and then standard worker into standard time and standard salaries. Okay, so this was the Taylor contribution, and from there the discipline of management arose. So whatever management MBA programs are there, this is the genesis of all the MBA programs. Now, as we have earlier talked about Adam Smith paradigm, which is specialization, converting jobs into specialization. So what are the positive effects of that? Now, I would like to you people to participate in this discussion. I will ask some certain names. I'll call some names, and then also attendance should be, you should start giving the attendance. I'm again sharing the link. Anyway, it's the same link which I have shared yesterday, but again I'm putting it. I think can anyone who's already having the link give it? We put it in the chat box over here. Okay, good. Thanks, Rajkumar. So Shubhangi, what do you think are the positive effects of Adam Smith paradigm?
So one would be that it increases productivity because if the workers specialize in a specific task, it'd be able to do it efficiently.
Yeah, good. Anything else? Ritika?
So,
Ritika?
yes, sir. So,
Can you
Adam
throw some
Smith
light?
paradigm. Yes, sir.
Adam, I'll tell it again. Adam Smith paradigm is specialization. When you convert jobs, break jobs into small pieces and then specialize.
Yes,
So,
sir.
what is the positive effect of Adam Smith paradigm?
So people are generally specialized in one area, so uh, it will improve the productivity, like
Oh,
Shubhangi
I
said.
think
Yes, sir.
productivity we have already done.
Yes, sir.
So it's
And
surprising or socho kuch. Anyone can contribute.
Sir, if there is one job that the employees are specializing in, then in that case, they will take less time to actually, like, they won't have to learn the whole paradigm of how things work. They just have to learn and like thoroughly what their part of the job is. So that
Yeah.
way, you save time in learning.
Okay. So eventually, it will. We can say that my mass production is going to rise, and then consequently, low prices could be achieved with the products. You can produce at low cost. And anything else? Anyone would like to contribute? Varun Saini, you have anything to say?
It's the same thing that the worker should not know the mechanics of the how car is made. They should only focus on the part which was easier to tell them that this is the part you have to connect like this and it will be over. They should not have to focus on how cars are made, how mechanics work.
Good. So there's also one point which we have not. I mean, nobody has raised it.
So
What
even
happens to
from
the? Yeah.
So even from the point of view of the employee, if there is one thing that they're specialized in, then that like the demand of that skill would increase because there are a certain number of people only who know how to do or that particular skill or have speciality in that skill.
Yeah, we can say that. Uh, yeah, definitely. And then you have what about complex products? If we talk about before Ford's intervention or mass production or assembly line, before and after, what about complex production of complex products? Will it become easier to make or difficult to make
Definitely easier.
because of the specialization? So cars, planes, tanks, see everything, all these, and then there was World War after that during the same period. So the mass production of planes could take place, tanks could be made, military, mass production of military equipments was happening. It was not that easy earlier. So it also led to the rise of management profession, Adam Smith paradigm. It also led to large scale employment, which nobody indicated. And then, as I've told you, a vicious circle was formed, which led to evolution of consumerism. The situation before, see, what is consumerism? Consumerism means that uh, if anyone wants a certain commodity, you can purchase it. I mean, purchasing power goes with the consumers. There is a situation where, in fact, in India, I've seen that situation when I was, I think, even when I was 10 years old. I was born in 1980, so 10 years old. And Maruti was just there by that time. Maruti had just come and everyone was having scooters only. And you just can't get a scooter on, like, I can just walk with the money, a bag full of money and purchase a scooter on a given day. I'll have to do booking. Even we see that there are some hit products in the market, like for Maruti, there is Baleno. For Hyundai, there is Creta model, which you still have to book, and you might get that after 3 months or 6 months or so. But then they are trying to realize the actual demand of it and then trying to produce it. But then there was a time where you just can't go and purchase it. Any and either scooter or even a cycle. There was a time when you can't purchase cycle, go and purchase a cycle whenever you want to, or a television or refrigerator for that matter. So you have to do booking, and it might take 6 months or 1 year to get it to you. So I've seen that happening in our days when we purchased one of the scooters was there, Lambretta scooter. So you have to actually do the booking of it, and then after several months you're going to get it from the showroom. So that is not consumerism. Consumerism is that the prices get low, and then people start purchasing things, and it becomes again a cycle. Like in a neighborhood, if one purchases something, if let's say in your neighborhood, a person who's of similar stature purchases an air conditioner, and so it becomes a kind of a cascading effect that everyone around you starts purchasing that. So I think all of you must have observed it, right? So this is one thing. I mean, you people also face this cascading effect in your own peer group in your own ways. I'm not sure that what you people are. I mean, what is the trend of what you are purchasing and what you are not. But then I can still I what I see right now is about phones. So it becomes a trend if someone purchases a new phone of certain, especially happens with the iPhones, then the whole peer group starts feels pressure of purchasing that, and everyone starts doing that. So yeah, so that is consumerism, and consumerism. The good side of the consumerism is that it led to the lowering of the unit cost of the product, so that everyone can purchase it. And the more you produce, and the more, so it becomes a vicious cycle altogether. And then, what are the negative effects of this? Anyone? Negative effects of Adam Smith paradigm?
So people are not people don't prefer to be multi-skilled because of this perception that one skill excellence in one skill may help them in their career. So why bother going in for the second
Oh, yeah. So it's
specialization?
very good. So one corollary of this is the hierarchical organization structure. What happens is because everyone is specializing in their own thing. Now, when you break down the job into many pieces, there are people required to monitor those. So you tend to get a hierarchical structure. Like there is a worker, then there is a supervisor, then above supervisor there is a shop floor manager. Above the shop floor manager there is a production manager. Above the production manager there is a general manager. Then there is a CEO. Then there is like, are you getting it? So it leads to pyramidical structure in an organization. So hierarchy gets created. When hierarchy gets created, things starts getting slow, and there is a discrimination, there is unrest among people because of the hierarchy. As even in the society, at least if you look 30-40 years back to in the Indian society, there was a hierarchy. So because of that hierarchy, there is an unrest in society. People are oppressed, and people at the top starts oppressing, and I mean there are varied living conditions also. So hierarchical organization structure is one of the negative effects. Another, can anyone tell anything else?
Sir, if a specific skill or occupation goes obsolete, then the person with that skill won't be able to switch to other skill easily if he's specialized in that particular
Yeah,
skill.
so you can say that often happens in software industry at least, where there's a constant pressure for upgrading yourself with the newest forms of languages which are coming up. So this is one thing. Then you have requirement of increased coordination. Now, why do you think there is a requirement for increased coordination?
Because the job has been divided into like smaller parts, so at the end, but the end product has to be combined together, so there has to be coordination. Otherwise, like one person doing their job perfectly, another person doing their job perfectly, but if they don't coordinate with each other, then it won't really result into what we want.
Exactly. And the slowest one in the whole chain, in the whole uh, process, the slowest workstation or the slowest worker is going to govern the output. Because if we are talking about assembly line over here, the slowest workstation will govern that in how much time the thing is produced. And there will be large number of non-value added activities because too many people are involved, right? or what is the value? What is non-value added activity? What is value? What is a value added activity? Okay, in this online class which we are having right now, what do you think are non-value added activities from my side? Anyone? Oh, now you'll be reluctant in telling because I have asked from my side. Okay, I'll tell it. Like switching on the windows. Okay, sharing. Now sharing screen is not coming, so I was exploring that. Um, Attendance, probably if I call your names individually and take attendance, would you call that as a value added activity or a non-value added activity?
Non-value.
Yeah, non-value added activity. So, and then checking mic again is a non-value added activity. Switching on to a video from a lecture mode or switching on to slides, that is again a non-value added activity in the lecture. So similarly here, when you break down jobs into several parts, small things which happens with every component, which generally lead to increase in non-value added activities in the production. Then for from workers side, what is the negative effect of Adam Smith paradigm? Okay, tell me one thing. Is it fair to apply Taylor's principles, four principles which are told on a worker? Is it fair to apply that on a worker?
Not exactly, sir, because we are sort of using this principle, cutting out any sort of remaining time that is not actually being used for something productive. Like,
So you are in a way trying to emulate the human worker as a robot. Getting it? You are trying to standardize everything. When you are trying to standardize everything in that process, you are considering a human being to do only some movements, specific movements, standard movements. So in a way, you are treating a human as a in form of a robot. So there has been a lot of debate on Taylor's principles, and people have spoken against that it is inhuman to apply the principles of standardization on human movements, and it creates a lot of pressure on the workers. So it's against being a human. And I mean, Taylor's principles and Adam Smith paradigm, they go hand in hand for the same reason. So after this, it was widespread, and every industry started following it. The effects of organization, effects of Adam Smith paradigm and Taylor's principles on the organization of the work were tasks were minorly subdivided, and then they were largely performed by unskilled workers. Why unskilled? I should have shown you that video of Charlie Chaplin. Next time I'll show you. So unskilled workers, because the tasks were so small, even an unskilled worker could do that, like tightening of the nuts and bolts for most of the things, or placing things on a conveyor belt, transferring things on a conveyor belt. So that was the problem. They were being performed by the unskilled worker or at least semi-skilled workers. So human skill was somewhere being compromised. I mean, the kind of development which should have been there, which people with the craftsmanship were getting, were there's a there is a enjoyment. There is a hormone release when you do some productive work, or when you do some creative work. Some sort of hormones are released in body, generally said as dopamine, which excites you towards certain work. When that dopamine release is not there, I mean, you consider if you have to do the same thing again and again for the rest of your life, um, maybe like tightening screws. I mean, that is ridiculous. I mean, you would eventually lose the morale is going to go down. So that was the problem with the Adam Smith paradigm. You're doing the same thing again and again, and hierarchy was made, which is again not good. Too much hierarchical structure is not good, and the complexity of operations required employment of large management staff like accountants, engineer, chemists, even social psychologists. So these were some implications of the on the organization. Then effect on the worker, as we were talking about, the work became monotonous. He did not feel any significant. Worker did not feel significant in working. Initially, they were excited to come in and join the force, but then over a period of time, it became menial. Lack of ownership because you're doing every small jobs. If you are making the complete thing on your own, it will give you a different pleasure. So lack of ownership was there, a lack of sense of belongingness कि ठीक है मैंने अपना काम किया and I just went away. I am not concerned कि whole product, how the whole product is coming out. So creativity loss is there. I mean, if you don't, creativity is like watering a plant. So if you don't do creative jobs, or if you don't do creative work, over a period of time, you tend to, I mean, that whole knack itself goes away. I mean, your ability to be creative goes away if you don't do creative jobs. So whole generation was hampered because of that, and the whole culture got affected because of that. Now the way out was, I'll just finish. This is the last one. So people started rotating the jobs, moving people from transferring. So that's why you see in banks and in many government jobs, transfers are there. So this is the implication of the Adam Smith paradigm. Actually, you do the job rotation, you enlarge the job. If possible, give 4 specialized jobs to one person, change the shift, and employee involvement more and all. So we'll continue tomorrow, and I'll conclude right now. Okay.